Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. I got Batman here today, co-hosting the show. I don't know where I found this guy.
I'm Batman.
What's up, Batman? Thanks for joining.
No worries. Came up from the Bat Cave. Alfred got everything all ready for me.
Yeah. Where's Robin, though? Come on.
Robin's in Brooklyn.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Batman has joined me today. He's not really Batman, but Batman has joined me today for ranking the albums of icedearth. Mr. Jack Toledano is back.
Yay. How's everybody doing?
We are doing good. Hopefully you are doing good, my friend. Jack hasn't been on the show in about a month, so good to have you back.
Couple months, yeah.
Has it been a couple months? I mean, this year is just flying by.
I think the last one I did with you was the Jethro Tull where we discussed all the special edition releases.
Oh, okay. So that was a while ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, time is just flying. Well, Jack is back. Jack is back, ready to talk about icedearth. We've been talking about doing this show for months, and we finally got around to it. So we got a dozen albums from probably one of the premier US, I guess you can call them a power metal band. I don't know. They're more to me like a traditional heavy metal band. They touch on power metal. They touch on prog metal. They touch on thrash metal. Yeah, thrash. But more importantly, they're just a really great American metal band.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it. So we got 12 albums to get through here. As always, I'm going to have my esteemed guest and co-host start us off with his number 12.
Okay. So I remember back in the spring we did the icedearth top 10. So if anybody's curious as to what they are, please go into Pete's catalog of all of his videos, and they're there. And I touched on some information at that time. We saw them together with Symphony X, and that was an amazing show. Stu Block was the vocalist then, and I think he really re-energized the band. But we are going to talk about, and this was difficult to do because they have, 5 lead singers throughout the course of their history?
Yeah.
5, yeah.
5 singers.
Some good, some not so good.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And this, I thought this was a little harder because, when we did the previous show, we were just basically pulling out our favorite songs. And, that can be hard too with a long catalog like this. But I found like a lot of these albums are just really, really strong. And there's not much that separates them. A couple of mine at the bottom, I'm not nuts about, but the ones at the top are just so damn good. So this was tough to put together.
Yeah, agreed. And that is part of the reason it took me so long. And I do apologize for that, but
no apologies necessary, Jack.
Okay, but we are ready. So number 12 is one of Tim Ripper Owens' albums. Now, I have nothing but the utmost respect for Tim Ripper Owens and what he did with that first album with Priest, Jugulator. One of his albums is closer to the top, but this one is kind of at the bottom, Framing Armageddon from 2007. Unfortunately, and this is not so much of a knock on him, but I think that they reached down into that Something Wicked trilogy just a little too much. It was just a little overkill, and that kind of did it for me. So
I totally agree.
Yeah.
More about that in a second.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I could add to that, I always wondered why Tim Ripper Owens left, and I found an article that said that John Schaefer thought that his heart really wasn't in it for that album, that his mind was out the door, and that he was, thinking about his solo career at that time. So that may have played into it.
Well, there have been plenty of people who have said that over the years about him.
Yeah.
It seems like Tim always has another project to do. I might even argue to say that perhaps the convolutedness of these two albums. My number 12 is the sequel to that one. All right, The Crucible of Man. So this is the Something Wicked Part 2. Right. I have an issue with both of these albums. I'll get to the other one with my next choice. But these, I don't know. I understand Schaefer at this point in time was feeling really inspired with the songwriting and everything. My issue with these two albums is they're long, they're convoluted. the songs just aren't memorable. It's like the storyline is driving these albums, but the parts of the albums just, they don't stick with you at all.
Right.
And you know, here Ripper's already out. Well, I'll get to him in a minute, but Barlow is back.
Right.
And I get the impression that Barlow is just like, he's just back just by default. It's like, 'cause he was the guy to convince to come back. And I get I was listening to this again last night, and I'm like, this album sounds to me like the whole album was written for Ripper in mind, but Ripper's gone, and Barlow here sounds like he's trying to do what Ripper would have done.
Yes.
And it doesn't work for me. I just don't find this album memorable. I don't, it's grandiose, it's big, it's bombastic, I get it, but you know what? I like icedearth doing kick-ass riff-driven songs and less of this big epic storyline stuff. I don't know. I just never connected with these.
Well, here's the thing. So you take a concept, just a normal concept album, and sometimes the concept's great, sometimes it's not so great, but the songs themselves, they have to be able to stand up on their own, even.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel it that this album or the other one does it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that love these albums. I get it. I don't hate them. They just don't really do a lot for me. You know, Behold the Wicked Child, that's a good tune. The Dimension Gauntlet, pretty good. Crucify the King, that's pretty good. Other than that, not a lot really stands out to me as like, all right, I remember and really dig those songs. So, I mean, it all sounds good, right? It's produced very well.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you love big, bombastic, complex, a lot of shit going on, then you'll dig this. I love the cover, by the way. I mean, the artwork.
The covers are phenomenal.
And I just don't think that, to me, Barlow just does not sound like this is what he wants to do. And I think the album suffers partially because of that. So that's my number 12.
Okay. Well, the funny thing is, that's my number 11, The Crucible of Man. Yeah, 2008. And I did rank these, and Framing Armageddon, I gave like a 2 to 2.5 stars. Crucible of Man, I gave 2.5 to 3 stars. And yeah, again, it's a little uninspiring. You know, just you mentioned Sacrificial Kingdoms, The Revealing, I Walk Alone. Those would have kind of stood out for me, but as a whole, that album just doesn't do it for me. And that's not to say that when I first heard that these albums were coming out, I was excited to hear them. And yeah, but when you compare them to their full body of work, yeah, they just don't stand up.
No, they don't. They don't really hold my attention, unfortunately. And I love this catalog. And so, you know, my number 11 is Framing Armageddon.
Flip-flop.
So we flip-flopped here. Yeah. So last album with Ripper. It's just weird. I don't really care for his performance on here that much.
Right.
I think his vocals work totally good and totally amazing on The Glorious Burden, which is the other album that they did with him. Whereas on here, it's almost like he has a hard time connecting with the material, and as such, his vocal performance suffers.
Right.
That's the impression I get. And you know, pretty heavy album. I think both these albums are pretty heavy for the most part, but they're not riff heavy.
No.
It's all about these intricate arrangements, and I don't know. I mean, again, 10,000 Strong, really good tune. Invasion, I like. Something Wicked, the title track, is good. When Stars Collide is good. But a lot of songs, these are both long albums. I just think John took the concept of this into areas it didn't really need to go. You mentioned it perfectly at the start of the show. It's like, you know, did he need to go back to this well again?
It's like, and not only for one album, 2 albums.
Yeah.
And
based on another album, right? That was much earlier. So yeah, I mean, how often, I get it. John felt he had something to say. I just don't find, quite frankly, to me, these are the only 2 weak albums in this catalog. And weak is borderline. They're not awful. I don't hate either one of them, but I never listened to these 2. And when they came out, I just could not get into them. And I've tried over the years because I love this band so much. I just don't find these albums that interesting. They should be, right? These should be albums I absolutely love based on what I like in general, but I just don't find it's not, they just have not drawn me in how many years now? So we're talking 2007, 2008. So in 12 and 13 years, I still have not been able to connect with these albums.
Right.
Meanwhile, you got, you know, they've released a bunch of them after that I find fine, enjoyable. I still listen to. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, now that we got those two out of the way, now we can really talk about the
Yes. So now we're to the top 10.
yeah.
And unfortunately, and this is a theme that I know you love. I know you were watching some horror movies and Halloween movies last night. Number 10 for me is Horror Show.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Again, I was very excited when they first put it out. And there are some songs that I like, but yeah, Horror Show. I mean, again, you know what? I just didn't really connect with the material or the fact that, you know what? Everything else that they did, I think was better.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I could totally see that. Yeah. Well, we'll get to that when I talk about it, but yeah, I think Horror Show might suffer from a couple too many tracks. I think it was a little ambitious, but there is some great material on there. So yeah, I'll get to that when I get to my list.
I mean, there's a couple good tracks: Wolf, Damien, My Name, Jack, Ghost of Freedom, Jekyll and Hyde. But, you know, if you're into Iced Earth and you like the horror theme, maybe it'll rank higher for all you out there. So.
Myself included, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. My number 10 is going to be their most recent, Incorruptible from 2017. Another great album cover. I think we can all agree these album covers are pretty damn terrific.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I like this album a lot. And I think this probably, you know, whenever you do a ranking show on a band that's still around cranking out albums, it's hard when it comes to the newer stuff because you don't quite have the history with it yet that you do with some of the others. So this could be an album that could creep up my list as the years go on. I like it a lot. For me, there's a lot that separates this from these two. Whereas these two I have issues with. I don't have an issue with this album. I think it's fine. Maybe a tad on the long side, but that's okay. But it's got some Raven Wing is fantastic. Love it. The Great Heathen Army completely kicks ass. Black Flag also is a juggernaut of a track. The Veil is a great kind of emotional soaring, kind of like, you know, I hate to call it power ballad because these guys don't do power ballads, but Iced Earth's version of that. And I think Stu is such a great singer and a hell of a nice guy. And I think he sounds fantastic on that. Then you got the song Brothers, which is kick-ass too. This album just has this big epic feel to it, even though, you know, as always, most of these albums are tied to some kind of a concept for the most part. But, it works.
Like about that, there is no concept. It's just standalone song.
Exactly, on this one. Yeah, this is one of the few. I think they only have like 2 albums that don't follow some kind of a concept. I don't know. I'd have to, as we go through these, I'll have to remember. But yeah, but this is, although, you know, or maybe I'm thinking of another album. One of their albums continues on. Oh, that's Plagues of Babylon. Okay. Plagues of Babylon is, he still quite wasn't done with the Something Wicked storyline yet. So a couple of those songs follow that. But yeah, this is all standalone tracks and quite good, I might add.
Okay. I do know we talked, you know, we texted each other the other night, and the fact that I had to give it a couple more listens because I just wasn't sure where it was going to fall. So
it's hard, right? Yeah, it's really hard when you have newish albums when you're doing something like this because, you know, you've obviously listened to it, but you haven't listened to it nearly as much as all these other albums that you've had for 10, 20, 30 years, right? So it's hard. It's really hard to put them in there. Yeah.
Okay, so number 9 for me, and this is an interesting one. It's their first album, their debut, Iced Earth, from 1990. So, and this is their very first singer, Gene Adams. I think he sounds a bit like Axl Rose trying to sing Iced Earth, but that was just my take. I did read that he was let go from the band because he refused to take vocal lessons. But there's a couple of really killer tracks on that album. There's actually the song Iced Earth, which they always closed with back in, you know, the day. Colors, which is a song that made my top 10. I love that song.
Oh, yeah.
I love the way it was redone with Matt Barlow. When the Night Falls, that's just another killer riff and chord progression. Love that. Yeah. And then it goes into a bit of a thrashy groove there. So
yeah,
it's some high points.
Yeah, I will say more than any other album in this ranking, that's the one I struggle with the most. because it does have some classic tracks on it. I don't want to give too much away because it's coming up in my list soon, but I'm not crazy about his vocals.
No.
All those classic songs that they later re-recorded with Barlow on sounds a hell of a lot better.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was cringeworthy.
Yeah, and so
we'll get more into that cringeworthiness later on, but
yeah. So I just didn't know where to put it, because I'm like, well, do I want to remain loyal to the songs, which I love, but do I want to knock it down a couple notches because I don't like the singer?
Well, you know,
I struggle with it. I really struggle with it.
It's hard when you hear Days of Purgatory for the first time. So for those who don't know, Days of Purgatory is a compilation re-release of some of those earlier songs with Matt Barlow on vocals.
Yeah.
I noticed that it sounds like some of the songs, even the guitars were redone or bolstered up, but the vocals definitely, yeah.
And I will say without a hesitation that all of those reworked tracks with him on it are way better than the originals.
Oh yeah.
I know there's some people out there that disagree. There's some people that are very loyal to those first two albums, and I get it, but there isn't a shadow of a doubt in my mind that Matt Barlow is an improvement on the vocals.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll get into that later, but
yeah. All right, so my number 9, I'm going to go with Plagues of Babylon from 2014. That's the second with Stu on vocals. Another fine album, another fine bit of album cover art here. Again, the first half of the album, I don't remember exactly how many songs, continues on with the Something Wicked storyline, because John just can't let go of that. But I enjoy this better than anything on those other two albums.
I read that it was the first 6.
First 6, okay, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, because it goes up to the end. The end is the last song, right? So that finishes it. Yeah. So you got, and the end is great. You got Democide, kick-ass. The anthemic, the culling was really good. The thrashy title track, Among the Living Dead, and then it finishes it off with the end, which is really good, big and epic feel. Like I said, I think these 6 songs are more successful than anything on those first 2 parts from the other albums. I can't get into those. I like this. Then you got all the other standalone tracks here. You got Cthulhu, which is amazing. And here, I don't know if you've caught any of this, but on their last couple of albums, they're starting to do a very similar thing that Iron Maiden has been doing for the last 20 years on a lot of their tracks, with these little kind of interludes that start off a lot of these big epic sounding albums. And they do it on this album quite a bit. Those lengthy kind of moody intros, which some people hate.
I never thought of it that way, but it's a good point. Yeah.
I was listening to these yesterday, and I'm like, man, it's amazing. They're doing like the same thing that Maiden's been doing. But yeah, otherwise, a very, very strong album, good production on here, and Stu sounds fantastic. I mean, he's the right singer for this band right now.
Yeah.
And he has been. Back to you.
So number 8, and for me, it fell a little more into the middle of the pack, Incorruptible, which we talked about already. One song that I don't think you mentioned was Clear the Way. I think that's a nice little throwback to their older stuff.
Yep.
You mentioned Raven Wing, the Veil, Seven-Headed Whore. And then the kickoff track, the Great Heathen Army, I thought that was pretty cool.
That's a killer song, yeah. It's a good album. Yeah, I just like, it's I just think for me, it's like it would rank higher perhaps as time goes on. It's just, it's still kind of new. All right, so I've made an executive decision right now, live, to flip-flop my number 7 and my number 8.
Oh, that's funny.
And I haven't done that too often. But like I always say, I think, these lists can change at any time. And I think mine's going to change right now. So I originally had another album at my number 8, but the more I'm thinking about it and the more we're talking about it, I'm going to put the debut at my number 8.
Okay.
For the reasons, even though, and you mentioned all the killer cuts on here, icedearth, Curse the Sky, Colors, When the Night Falls is killer.
Yeah,
the Funeral is a great instrumental. I just don't dig the vocals on here. And as much as I really love a lot of these songs as classic icedearth songs, I'm going to knock it down just a hair on my list in favor of another album that I think I just listened to a lot more. But I will take any of these songs on the Purgatory album, and they're that much better.
I think When the Night Falls was done killer on the Live in Athens as well.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, I mean, I think we could probably argue that every song on that Live in Athens album is the definitive version of that song, right?
Yeah. Yes.
They're amazing. That's a great live. If anybody hasn't heard the Live in Athens triple disc live set,
Yeah.
but yeah, just
that helped me get into the older material.
oh yeah, because it's killer on there, right? I mean, just amazing. When you buy the album, it gives you, and you listen to it, you think they're playing in front of like 50,000 people, but I heard it was like 1,000, 1,500 people. That's it.
Could have been 2,000-3,000. Yeah.
Oh yeah, whatever it was. It sounds much more massive than that, but everybody is just like totally into it, and it's one of the greatest sounding live albums of the last like 20, 30 years. It's just amazing, and the intense performances, and they play like almost every single of their best tracks from those first 3-4 albums. It's amazing stuff.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm gonna go with the debut at number 8.
Okay, that's funny. I hope it wasn't me that influenced you to do that.
You know what? When I was putting this list together, I had a hard time. I really that debut went up and down on my list, up and down. I had no idea where to put it because I'm like, I love these songs. I don't dig the vocals. I like the songs better when they re-record them with Barlow. So where do I put this damn album? And so I'm just sitting there, we're talking about it, and I'm like, you know what? I think I like the one that I originally had at number 8 a little bit better for other reasons. So, whatever.
Okay. So number 7. And this is an album, and it's a quite good album. I ranked it as 3.5 to 4 stars. I mean, it fell to number 7 because they're not because it's a bad album, but because there's other albums that are just that much more kick-ass, that much better. I'm talking about Dark Saga. That's from 1966. There are some great songs on there. The title track itself, I Died for You. The Hunter, which they would always play in concert. Vengeance is Mine, another great song, killer track off of Alive in Athens. What else? Slave to the Dark, Question of Heaven, etc. But it's a little lighter than some of their other albums.
Yeah. Did you say 1966, by the way?
Did I? 1996. Thank you for catching me.
I was going to say, I didn't know icedearth has been around that long.
better you than our people, our fans watching us. Yeah,
because they would point it out, right? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying.
I wasn't sure that's what I heard. I was kind of like, I know what you meant.
Yeah, I was barely walking at that time. Yeah,
I know, right? Jeez, I was just being born. Yeah, I mean, I'll get to that album more in a minute, but yeah, I think that they, some fans were a little upset at that album because it was, I mean, the album that came before it is like in your face, like brutal, and then they went to that, which much more musical. Follow this, storyline about a comic book character and all that kind of stuff. But I think they got new fans with that album also.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's more musical, more melodic. So.
I mean, you know what? I know when Priest has done this, they've tried to do different things on different albums, and for different reasons to try and garner more audience. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with attempting that.
No, there really isn't. There really isn't. And you either like it or you don't. I mean, it's just that's what it comes down to. All right, my number 7, which originally was my number 8. I'm going to go with 2011's Dystopia.
Oh, okay.
This was the first album with Stu Block on vocals, fresh out of a very good band called Into Eternity. If you never listened to Into Eternity, fine band. And he'd slot right in here as if nothing. I mean, I think it's a really strong album. It's got a mix of the moody but really melodic stuff with some of the faster stuff. You got the manic title track, which I think is a great song. One of my favorite songs from the latter period is Anthem. And that's just got tons of hooks. It's really moody. It's heavy. Boiling Point is like a Fast and Furious kind of thrash track. You got the majestic Anguish of Youth, which another of my favorite tracks on here. Dark City kicks ass. And then you got the big bombastic Tragedy and Triumph, which is, a great track all the way at the end of the album. It finishes things off. I just think this is a very fine album. More fine artwork here. I dig it.
Yeah.
And, I liked it when it came out, and I still totally love it.
Yeah, no, it's You know, it was very refreshing debut for Stu Block. I feel like it re-energized the band. And you know, when we saw them, Stu Block, they were touring that album, I believe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know that he pulled in some of the classics in that concert and it sounded great.
Well, he was a good choice because he can do it all, right? He can do that really upper register shrieking like Ripper does. And then he could do all the moodier mid-range kind of, gruffy, growly thing that Matt Barlow was good for. And he can do the ballady stuff that Barlow did really well.
Right. Yeah.
So he kind of can do it all. I mean, I don't know if you ever listened to him in Into Eternity, but Into Eternity were this great, like kind of like technical progressive metal band. He would do like the high pitched shrieking, the melodic stuff, and then he would do death metal growls. So he would do it all. So I knew going in that this was the right guy who covered just about anything, and he has done it every step of the way for this band.
Okay, well that's cool because don't put that album away because that's my number 6.
There you go.
And you basically covered most of the songs. I think you mentioned Boiling Point, Dystopia, Dark City, Tragedy and Triumph. So that I don't think much more needs to be said since you just covered it. But yeah, it was a very nice, debut for Stu Block.
Yep. Strong album. Strong album. All right. My number 6, I'm going to go with Horror Show from 2001.
Okay.
Again, I love these horror characters. I thought he did a great job of kind of capturing the mood. And here's another one of those albums. I talk about this all the time, how I'm not a big lyric guy, but this is one of those albums where I really wanted to kind of read along to the album and the lyrics because I'm such a fan of these horror and monster characters. And I think, as another kind of cool concept from John Schaefer, I think it works really well. A lot of good riffs on this album. Damien, you mentioned Wolf is great. Imhotep, based on the Mummy, that's another fine song. Jack the Ripper, another, if you love all these kind of characters, you gotta love this Frankenstein, the Phantom Ghost. I will argue probably it's a little long, this album. A couple of the songs kind of sound very similar to each other, but I dig the vibe they went for here, and I just like the concept. So for me, it's this one's a winner and a keeper. So that's my number 6.
Well, I have a couple of notes to add to that, and just very, outside of icedearth, but you mentioned the Phantom Opera Ghost. Here's a fact. So our daughter Sam bought us tickets to see Phantom of the Opera. Do you know we went and saw it the day before they freaking shut down Broadway?
Really? Wow.
Yeah. It was like March 16th, and then they shut it down on March 17th. That pretty wild.
I've never seen it. I mean, it's been playing there forever. I've never seen it.
But
was it good?
What's that?
Was it good?
Oh yeah, it was good. We had this discussion the other night. I'm not really into musicals because Sam kind of forced us all to watch Hamilton, and as soon as it started with the rap, totally lost me. I'm sorry, I tried. But whereas Phantom, you're there and you're seeing it live, and all the, the sets are beautiful. The characters and their clothing were, everything was beautifully done and choreographed. But I just didn't really understand the story. I would have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of like Broadway musicals either, to be honest with you. And I know the Phantom of the Opera story very well because I own almost every film that was ever made, and I've seen them a million times. But I've never felt the need to go see it on Broadway. But it's been playing there forever, and everybody said it's great. So hey, that's cool. You got to go see it, though. At least you can chalk it up as something you did right before COVID-19 shut it all down, right?
Day freaking before. It's just we got so lucky.
Yeah.
I didn't get so lucky with my Islander tickets a few weeks later, but
no.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Number 5. What do you got?
Number 5. Okay. So this is will probably be, for me, it'll be the best of the Stu Block albums, Plagues of Babylon. I just love that song Peacemaker, that it's an icedearth meets Molly Hatchet. Again, as we mentioned, it's the first 6 songs of were part of the Something Wicked trilogy. You mentioned Democide, The End, Plagues of Babylon. You know, again, it was just a nice continuation of the first album that we mentioned, Dystopia.
Yeah, it's a very solid record. Really is. Good metal album.
Right.
You know, I mean, we've gotten used to like counting on this band to just deliver every single time. For the most part, they really do, I think.
Right.
All right, so my number 5, I'm going to go with 2004's The Glorious Burden,
Okay.
which I saw them on this tour. Fantastic. It was them, Evergrey, and Children of Bodom.
Oh,
Great
okay.
lineup, right? I mean, just
Yeah.
really, really good. You know, this is the first album with Ripper, so you know the beloved Matt Barlow is gone. He decided, I think he wanted to be a policeman at the time, right? So he left the band, left music, went to be a cop, but that didn't last too long. But and I thought that Ripper knocks it out of the park on here. Again, this is a very, you know, deep concept album about all these big, you know, important times and events in military history, because of course Schaefer is into all that stuff big time.
Right.
You got the amazing Declaration Day on here, When the Eagle Cries. I think Ripper sounds amazing on that. Red Baron / Blue Max, I mean his screams on that are just legendary.
Yeah.
The Reckoning, another kick-ass song. Hollow Man, then you have the whole 3-part 30-minute Gettysburg suite, right, on the second disc. Just a great album. You know, for some people, maybe dipping too much into the historical war stuff, I guess, for some. And it's a long album. It's a really long album. But I think it's, you know, hearing the different voice in the band, I think is refreshing at this point. I think it had already run its course by the next album, but that we've already talked about that. So I don't know. I like this album a lot. I think it's really, really cool, really enjoyable. Musically, it's got killer riffs on there. And most of the album is pretty damn heavy. I mean, Schaefer's just chugging along with his, you know, amazing, you know, rhythm guitar work. The riffs are just crazy. And the one thing that always frustrated me about this band is, and I just did a show with Rich Catino about Evergrey, and the same thing too. I mean, this band has had ridiculous amount of lineup changes.
Yeah.
I mean, Schaefer just can't keep a group going. I mean, it's just amazing. You got new guitar players, new drummers, on bass players on almost every album. It's just like, it's hard to keep track of just who's in this band anymore, to the point where, does it really matter? All it really matters is who's singing and John Schaefer, right?
I wonder if Schaefer's part of the problem.
Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. And here on this album, I believe this is Richard Christie on drums.
Yeah.
Also from the Howard Stern Show. And he's a sick ass drummer. He is an amazing drummer. I don't know what he's doing these days, but man, good stuff. Anyway, that's my number 5.
I think there's going to be a lot of segueing into your 5s into my 4s, because that is my number 4.
There you go.
Burden. Now, first of all, you showed everybody the cover. I think that is an amazing freaking cover.
It is. And, you know, I mean, this deviates from their normal.
Yeah.
Because that little mascot creature that they always have on their covers, whatever he's called, is not here this time.
It's like a Civil War scene. Yeah. But I'll say that I'm a history buff also. I love history, and I thought that was a great concept. And, you know, I'll get to the music in a second, but oh yeah. Amazing. If anybody out there is into history, I'll also say that I know you and I both like to check out all the different Netflix shows that are offered, but I'm a fan of that show, Turn Washington Spies. So
it's good. Yeah.
Anybody wants anything historic, check it out. I'm actually watching it for the second time.
That must be good.
Oh, it's amazing. I love it. I think the hair on the back of my neck stood up in season 1 when George Washington first made his appearance in, I think, the 5th or 6th episode. So cool. But anyway, getting back to, you know, you mentioned a lot of songs, but I think Green Face was his best work. I mean, great vocals. Valley Forge, Declaration Day, When the Eagles Cry,
Yeah.
as you said. Just a great job by Tim and John Schaefer.
Well, yeah, I mean, the lyrical content is pretty intense, and I think he does a great job singing. It's a big, bombastic, majestic, powerful album that I just think it resonates really well, and it's definitely top tier icedearth in my opinion.
Right. Okay. So you're number 4.
My number 4 could rank higher. I think the songs deserve to rank higher. I think you probably know where I'm going here. But again, I kind of like these songs better when another guy's singing them. So I'm going to go Night of the Stormrider as my number 4.
Yep.
Again, it has some of my favorite icedearth songs on it. This is the only album they did with a guy named John Greeley. He's a bit better than the guy in the first album, I think.
Right.
Got kind of like this Rob Halford, Warrell Dane from Nevermore and Sanctuary type of thing going on. So his vocals were okay.
We're gonna
I still like
really in a bit when I get to Night of the Stormrider, but yeah.
But I mean, again, I struggle because I wanted to rank this higher because I mean, it's got Angels, Holocaust, the title track, Desert Rain, Pure Evil, Travel and Stygian. I mean, these are some of my favorite icedearth songs.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
But again, I like these songs better on the live album, and I like these songs better on Days of Purgatory. So that's the reason why it's number 4 and not number 3, 2, or 1, right?
Okay.
But I love it. I mean, I just love it, and there you have it.
Okay. Well, then I made a little bit of a controversial decision there, but we'll get to that.
Okay, well, that's all right.
But I'm very excited that we're down to the top 3 because to me, all 3 of these albums are killer albums. So for me, number 3 is Matt Barlow's first effort, Burnt Offerings.
Oh yeah,
1995. Yeah, I mean, you have the title track kicking off the album, which is great. Last December, Brainwashed, Dante's Inferno. I mean, I think they do it a little better on the live album, but
it's amazing on the live album.
Yeah, insane. Yeah.
It's not too often you get like a 16-minute, like kind of like power / thrash metal juggernaut like that works from start to finish like Dante's Inferno. I mean, it's incredible.
But that album got a 4.5 stars for me.
Yeah, it's a great one. It's a great one. All right, my number 3, I'm going to go with the Dark Saga from 1996.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. I know there are people who probably don't like this as much as some of the other stuff because it's not quite as heavy. I don't mind it. I love the cover. So here you got, take on the whole Spawn character. Todd McFarlane drew this. Obviously, he was the creator of Spawn. I love the melody on this album. I think on our top 10 song show we did of icedearth, a lot of my favorite songs from icedearth are their slower, moodier, more melodic tracks because I think they do that so well. I love the heavy riff-based stuff too, almost as much, but I love when Barlow especially did that nice melodic. We've talked about how when he does the more melodic voice, he sounds like Paul Stanley almost to it from Kiss. And I love when they do those type of songs. And you got The Hunter, you got I Died for You, great, memorable, moody, almost like ballady type tracks that I think are just unforgettable. But then on the same token, you got like Violate, which is heavy as all hell. The title track is great. Vengeance is Mine is a kick-ass metal track. Scarred, The Depths of Hell. I think that people look at this album and think it's so mellow because they're comparing it to Burnt Offerings that came right before it. But if you look at this on its own, it's actually a pretty heavy album. It's just not as raging and just almost brutal as Burnt Offerings is. And it's not the riff-o-rama fest that the first 2 albums are. But I still think it's a damn fine album, and I love it. I love it.
Okay, very cool. All right, so my number 2, I'm going to do a drum roll for number 2 because number 2 is going to reveal number 1. Originally, number 2 was going to be my number 1, but I'm like, you know what? I have to pay credence to the songs on my number 1. So for me, number 2 is Something Wicked This Way Comes, 1998. Yes, that's what got me started many years ago. As I mentioned, I went on to this anonymous website that was rating metal albums, and there was a reader. After we did our top 10, he pointed out to me what that site was, and And shout out to that guy. Thank you. That was the site. I can't remember it, but that's, you know, and this guy would rank albums from 1 to 10, and he gave that a 9. And back then we didn't really have Amazon or ways to listen to the music, so I had to take a chance on it, and you know what, blew me away immediately with Burning Time. So
Yeah, yeah.
and then listening to that original 3-part trilogy with the character Set Abomine, I believe is his name, right? It you know, the Coming Curse trilogy, I used to call it.
Yeah.
My Own Savior, which is another favorite of mine. Birth of the Wicked. Yeah.
It's a great album. That was my first album too. I bought it because you bought it, right?
Yep.
I remember seeing the cover, and I mean, I'm a sucker for a cool cover like that. And I was like, all right, I kind of want to get that, but I don't know what this band is about. And then I was like, all right, so I took a chance on it. I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. Love it, love it, love it. All right, my number 2 is 1995's Burnt Offerings,
Okay.
I should say. And you know, that is a little different album cover than they originally released it on. They did the reissues and they changed some of these album covers a little bit. I don't know if this has the original. It doesn't look like they do, but I guess that was something to do with the original record label. Anyway, their heaviest album by far. First with Matt Barlow, who dialed it up a notch on this album. He would sound a little bit different on subsequent albums, but here he's going for a real kind of like nasty tone. I mean, again, some mandatory icedearth tracks on here, like Last December.
Yeah.
Creator Failure, you know, Dante's Inferno, which we've already talked about, the title track, for God's sake, Burning Oasis. Burning Oasis. I mean, just.
You mentioned Last December. That was also in their early set lists.
Yes.
So, always.
Yeah. Brutal album. This, like I said, I don't even know what you call this. This is not power metal. This is definitely thrash, but it's like, I guess the closest I can come to is maybe like those similar period Testament albums where they were doing that really, really brutal heavy thrash, and Chuck Billy was doing kind of the growly vocals. That's kind of the intensity here. Just ridiculously crushing with some of the best riffs you're ever going to hear, because John Schaefer is a creator of some of the most kick-ass
Jugulator.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Similar intensity. Yes. Yeah. Similar intensity. Yeah, absolutely. So that's my number 2.
Okay.
I think we know what your number 1 is.
Yes. Night of the Stormrider.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes.
I can't argue that, because it's got so many of their classic songs on it, right?
And I did it basically for the songs. I mean, I have 3 songs in the top 10 from that album. Yeah. Angels Holocaust, Desert Rain, Pure Evil. I love Pure Evil. That is one of my most favorite songs of all heavy metal.
Wow.
Now, unfortunately, John Greeley, he's okay. He's a little bit of an improvement over, was it Gene Adams? Yeah. But you know what? Still a little cringeworthy. It almost sounded like the vocals weren't gritty enough. Almost like they were a little too angelic for that material, and they need to be a little dirtier. And I just think Matt Barlow brought the intensity that those songs needed.
Right.
That's
which is why this album was my number 4 and not my number 1 or 2.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
I got to give John Schaefer credit there, because
the songs are there. Yeah, I absolutely. That's why for me, those first 2 albums I struggle with, because the songs are there. We just love the songs as they were sung by another guy.
Right. Yes.
It's hard. It's hard. It's one of the few instances, I think, in metal where you have that sort of thing where, you know, a band wrote some of their most memorable classic tracks early on with a couple different singers before they got their guy, all right, who then made those songs his own. You don't see that too often, right?
Right.
Interesting predicament, kind of, right? Well, I think everybody knows what my number 1 is. My number 1 is that first album that I ever heard from the band. It's the one that I go back to the most, I think. And I love it start to finish. I mean,
yeah,
to go back to those moodier, melancholy tracks that I really like from this band. You got Melancholy, Holy Martyr. You got Watching Over Me. Blessed Are You. I love those 3 songs. And then you got
Reaping
Burning
Stone, I
Time,
think, is a great song.
Disciples of the Lie, right?
I don't know if you heard me, Reaping Stone, that's a very moody but heavy.
Yep. Prophecy, Birth of the Wicked, The Coming Curse. I mean, I love this top to bottom, love the cover, love the production on this album. There's just riffs all over the place on here. Lots of cool guitar solos. And who is in the band on this album? Let me just take a look here.
I remember
that real quick.
Guitarist was Larry Tarnowski, I believe.
So we got Schaefer, we got Matt Barlow, James McDonough on bass, and then you got Larry Tarnowski on guitar solos, and a couple other guys filling in here and there. So again, this band has always been plagued with lineup consistency.
Yes,
it's John Schaefer's show. That's the way it always has been, and he always gets a fine cast alongside him. But I think sometimes bands of this nature, people latch onto consistent lineups. People like bands, right? It's like, I like a band. I love all the members in the band. I want to connect with the band. And I think that Iced Earth has always kind of been the John Schaefer show, good, bad, or ugly. And you have to wonder if this band would have been a little bit bigger had he stuck with a static lineup for a long period of time. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Because should these guys have been as big as Metallica? Maybe, right? Why not? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, with the right connections, who knows? I mean, at the time when I first heard Something Wicked, I thought they should have been as big as Metallica, or could have been.
Yeah.
It saddened me that a group like them or Symphony X aren't more popular than than they could be.
Yeah, I think some of these bands probably were 5 years too late to the games. You got to wonder if like Iced Earth or Nevermore or Symphony X would have came out like in the mid 80s.
That's a very good point.
It's just, I mean, it's tough in the 90s. It really was, because you had metal was kind of going into the underground. You got grunge and alternative and hip hop and all that stuff, and rap is the popular stuff, dance music. So it's kind of difficult. But you know what? We love them anyway, regardless of how big they got or not. They're still around, still kicking ass. That's kind of all that really matters.
And most important thing, we have your show to let the world know about them.
That's right, because we'll talk about these bands forever as long as we are able to do so. So that's important.
And that's what I love the show for, that you have that ability to do that. I mean, so for example, take Primal Fear. So they're not as well known, and they're not going to get as many hits as, say, if you were to talk about somebody famous like Metallica or Aerosmith or somebody like that. But I read through some of those comments, and I would say it was just, I would say 99.5% positive. People really appreciated that you brought that out to the world.
Well, I mean, and that's the mission statement of this channel, right? It's like to bring to light bands that the masses just have not adopted, and that's okay. So for either people who haven't heard these bands before but like this kind of music, or for people who do like these bands and like to listen to people talking about them because no one else is doing that, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's why I do this. That's what it comes down to. So cool. Well, there you have it, everybody. Ranking the Iced Earth catalog from Jack Toledano and myself. Curious to see how everybody ranks these albums. Do all dozen, do your top 5, whatever. Jack and I will both be kind of going through the comments to see how everybody's ranking them and whether it's really different than ours or similar. It doesn't really matter because we all hear these albums differently, and that's the cool thing about music, right? So albums maybe aren't kind of as high on our list. You may love to death, and that's the way it should be. So visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Stay tuned tonight for another edition of the Monsters Den with Rich Catino and myself. We're going to be talking about some 80s slasher films, so tune in for that. And then we got all sorts of stuff coming up this week, so you don't want to miss any of it. For Jack Toledano, I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you guys later on. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Have a good one, everybody.